Okay, to the last Thursday presentation in the LibreText suite of presentations for Open Ed Week this year. The topic of this discussion is, do you want to build a textbook? And it's meant to be a more hands-on or pseudo hands-on approach in order to do things rather than a top-level discussion of the basic themes and aspects that we are currently working on. So if you don't already have an account, then if you can provide your name and email address in the chat, we can then try to get you an account quickly in order to be able to follow along with what we're doing. Otherwise, this will be recorded, and this is being recorded, and then you have the ability in order to peruse it at your leisure. So if the LibreText is new to you, I'm going to try to not overwhelm you with all the features and aspects that we have, although that can happen quite easily. The key aspects behind the LibreText project is twofold. One is to use the 5 R's that defines OER in order to take in, and we use the term harvest, which means that we integrate existing OER content into our libraries. And then we standardize that content in order to be able to make it so that the underlying code is consistent across each of the resources that we have here. That process can be a quick process or it could be a slow process depending upon the nature of the aspect. But the key essence is that then the repository that we are maintaining and hosting, while we don't own technically the material on that, we are then using within Open Educational Resources basic premise of being able to, and subject to attributions, so that everybody else in the community can utilize it as effectively as they can. And that is best utilized within the concept of making a textbook within the LibreText infrastructure. And there are a set of tools that we have in order to be able to address that at different levels. But what I want to mention here is essentially by taking content and hosting on different pages on the site, it provides a mechanism in order to effectively remix content. That is to take content from one page and mix it into a new book that you're creating as efficiently as possible. That is with a lower energy barrier so that you're not screaming and yelling, or at least doing it less than you would if you were operating without the infrastructure that I have available off of that. Ethan, are you able to make accounts? I haven't asked you that.
Yes, I can do that if you need.
If you can do that, that would I'd be appreciative. Okay, so that basic principle is essentially underlying that you come into the LibreText project and we have a bunch of Lego blocks. Each Lego block is a quantum, a part that you grab and you mix together in order to build your book. But you also have the ability in order to customize and build things from scratch. And it's that combination of either building from scratch or remixing that empowers much of the infrastructure behind constructing your own textbooks on the LibreText. The last thing that I'll mention is that the quantum, the individual components that you can mix into your book doesn't have to be necessarily text, but we have a portfolio of other learning objects that are available for people to grab on. They could be visualizations, simulations, or other things that have all been collected, so you can grab and say, I want this, embed it into here, I want this, embed it into there. And so you don't have to worry about particular issues associated with implementing different technologies into whatever platform that you may be using other than LibreText. So let's just start, and I'm going to start with the chemistry library. And I guess before I begin, I should ask, what are you guys interested in? I mean, I could talk about a general overview of that thing, but I want to make sure I actually target and hit exactly what you guys are. And I don't necessarily mean the field. I mean, do you want to, is it saying that you want to learn how to build a book from start to scratch off of that? Is there some specific aspects that you want to really be able to focus on? Otherwise, I can give you a general vanilla based overview of things.
I need to know where to go to start. There's so many pieces to this. I can't figure out. I saw a presentation and I knew what it looked like, but it's not in Commons. It's not in Conductor. It's not in, I got
okay,
lost.
Well, let's start with that. So there's a recommended workflow that we have out there in terms of building a book. And it doesn't necessarily apply to everybody in every case that's out there, but it's something that we'd recommend. And that is available on the Commons and Conductor system. So if you don't have an account on the Commons and Conductor system, you can go to, and I'm going to type in the URL here, right there. And when you go to this site, the front end acts as a search infrastructure. The back end acts as an organizing tool. And that's the organizing tool that's really productive in order to be able to facilitate the construction of a book. And you can get a free account. You don't even have to write your name into the chat or anything like that. It's freely available if you type in login at Conductor. In this case here, you can register. You can register if you have your own campus. Actually, let me phrase here. I'm not sure. If you have your campus ID that has it's coupled to either Google or Microsoft, as most campuses are these days, you can log in via that one without giving us local credentials. Either way will work. I'm going to log in with myself, so I have sort of super credentials off of here, and this is the Conductor. Now, I went in detail over the Conductor a few days ago, and I don't want to emphasize too much of that, other than it gives a great mechanism in order to conduct your business in terms of building the book. When you want to build a book, we recommend building a project as a way in order to organize that. So you can go into projects and you can create a project. I'm going to ignore all those things. And this is the infrastructure that lets you organize yourself in terms of being able to do it. It also provides a mechanism for you to be able to communicate with us on our team. So if you have a problem and you want to ask someone on the LibreText team or myself personally, you, once it's created, have the opportunity to flag the page or flag the project, and it goes to us. And this is the preferred communication channel that we have with people dealing with projects, because inboxes don't work very well. So in other words, this is relatively straightforward with a few components that require some addressing. Here's a project. So I'm going to call this project Geography. Now that's there. I spelled geography right. Classification, this is just the type of project that we're doing. We're going to be building a textbook, so I'm just going to call it a construction project. However, we have harvesting projects, and that's what I was talking about before, and those are largely an internal project for my team. Or technology, we have LibreFest, which is our meetings that can be handled on individual campuses and other things. But let's just focus on construction right now. You have the ability in order to make that either a private or public project. And that basically means that if you make it public, that other people have the ability to know this project exists and who you are. They're not going to see a lot of the details behind it, but they get an overview of it. And it gives an opportunity for you to be able to say, hey, I'm building a project dealing with something. So that if someone else is building a project dealing with that something, they can do a search, find you, and then make it so we don't have to recreate the wheel on multiple campuses. So I'm going to make it private just because I don't care. The current progress is just a mechanism to tell us what the current state of affairs off of that. The number off of that is going to be 0. Status means whether it's available, open or completed. We're going to make this in progress because it's for us and for us to be able to move forward. Open gives the opportunities. I can pre-made projects and give it off to my student developers. And if I have a URL for the project, I can write that down, but we don't already. I can make tags off of that. So I can say this is going to deal with geography and geology and carrots, the 3 things that are most important that's out here. And that's just meta tagging in order to be able to find this thing and do more refined work than what we get otherwise. I can write down authors if I want. My name is already connected to this, but this provides a mechanism if you want to connect to other existing resources that you're harvesting. You can put them in, including licensing and documentation. The intent is that every book that's compiled, that's the term that we use in order to say that the book is now available on our bookshelves for people to use and be able to download a PDF and common cartridge and be able to go to the bookstore and all those things like that. That's when a book is compiled, and it goes through several steps in order to be able to do that. But when it's compiled, we always have a back-end project page, which is what we're building right now. In this case here, we're starting with that instead of ending with it. And I can add some notes like this is a very special day, and that's only internal, and it creates a project. Now, again, remember that the intent of a project page in the Conductor is to facilitate the steps necessary in order to build the book. It doesn't have every single set of details that you'd be interested in order to be able to pursue that. We have a construction guide in order to do that, which I'll talk to you momentarily about, but it is a convenient mechanism to give you overall scaffolding. And we're working on ways in order to update that subject to individual campuses' workflows, because different campuses have different workflows that are out there. So this is the project page. At the top here, you have this rainbow bridge right here that gives you 6 different options that are particularly important in order to build your book. The edit properties essentially is the editing infrastructure that we have already wrote into. Manage team. Every member who is on the team, that has signed up for an account, can be added to your team. That's if you want to actually work in a team. If you don't worry about it. So I can come in here and I can say, I want to add Ethan to my team. And now Ethan is added to my team. And that means he then is able to access this page, and we can actually start to work together off of that. Or I could say, I really don't like Ethan. So now he's out, and I'm looking for some nasty emails or nasty comments in the chat from him, assuming he's paying attention right now. The timeline is what we're going to be starting with, but first I want to go down here in order to emphasize 2 key aspects associated with what a conductor page applies to. One is a discussion thread. Now, a discussion thread is meant primarily, or threads is meant primarily for discussion amongst the team, although it is a useful mechanism in order to keep notes, especially if you're the only member on your team. And it's largely, you could talk about a thread, and I'm going to say this deals with carrots. And now I can make a series of topics like roses are red, carrots are blue. Where are my glasses? And I send it here. So every member on the team will get this email, which is only me, and I don't get the email because I wrote it, so we don't need to gum up my inbox off of that. But anytime that anyone joins the group, they can then joins the team, they can then come in and see the discussion that's here. And that's a very powerful mechanism in order to engage in this conversation, such that anyone can go back and see what was the nature of the conversation at any one point, instead of saying, well, here's a team, especially for large teams, and I told this person this thing and this person this thing, and that makes it more awkward in order to be in. Moreover, it also facilitates a centralization such that if you request help from the LibreText team, we can go into your project and see what the state of affairs is off of things. And such. So to get to the conductor, you go to that website right there, commons.libretext.org. In the upper right-hand corner, you can go to the conductor. So this is really powerful communication line. I've loved switching over to it because it makes it very convenient in order to reduce the inboxes, reduce my emails in my inboxes, that is. The second one are the tasks. And the tasks provides a mechanism in order to say, well, here are the tasks that I want to be able to pursue for this book. Now, typically they're along the lines of chapters. So you can come in and say, I want to add a task, and that task is going to be chapter 1. I can write a description, which I'm going to, I can even go down to say start date to end dates. And then I could go to chapter 1 and chapter 2 and chapter 3, etc. So I can actually flesh out the book here, which is a convenient way in order to flesh things out. Again, this is a little bit more useful. Actually, it's useful for both teams and individuals who are doing this because it helps to put everything in a big context. You can then go in because we have times off of here. You can start to reflect that in a Gantt plot. A Gantt plot of a single line is not overly successful, but then you can start to organize a team in order to be able to build different areas and different chapters and different sections accordingly off of that. But anyways, I'm going to presume that we're working largely as single member teams. The timeline, and this is the key aspect that I want to be able to focus to start with, which is where Veronica's question was directed, is that we have this roadmap, this workflow that we recommend people to pursue. Now, it's not, you don't have to pursue every single step in this way, but it's a convenient mechanism in order to be able to go through that. So that I clicked on the timeline there. Down below is the Gantt plot that we already showed before. I can also look at a calendar plot to see when I'm supposed to be doing things, like the deadlines and other things like that that are available for that. It's still standalone. It's not designed in order to couple to your Google Calendar or any other calendar off of that. That may be an option that we can look at later on, but it's not there. Okay, so let's look at this recommended roadmap. It has 12 steps, and not every step may be applicable to you, but it's a convenient mechanism in order to go off of here. So this first step, which is largely where we're at right now, is the vision. So you don't typically, it's difficult to build a book if you don't know what you're building. And I mean, I don't mean just basically to say, I want to deal with a geography book. You have some idea behind what you want to do. That could be somewhere along the lines of, here's a geography book that I use, and I want to replicate that same geography book in open educational resources. That's a vision. Or it's, this is a geography book that you do, I hate it, I want to do this, 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 and this, and therefore I want to customize it and put it down there. So this is where you find your inner self, you sit under a tree, meditate, and figure out what it is that you want. Now, I want to be clear here that this is important in order to do in the beginning. However, you don't have to be 100% right. You don't need the whole story in the beginning. You just need to be able to have an idea about where you're going. And obviously, the more complete that vision is, the easier it is in order to be able to build around it rather than doing a more organic process. However, my opinion regarding books and OER books in particular is that they're an ongoing process, that what you're looking at when you see a book is a snapshot in the evolution of the book, not a finished book. That's the reason why we have editions in traditional paper-based books. But here it's the same concept, that if you do something and you don't like it, fix it, change it. If you find something that you do want to introduce at some point after your vision is created, fine, fix it. You are in control of this thing. It is your book out there. I will mention this, that if you go to any of our libraries, and ignore this bar up here, this is just because of some timing of things that are not done. When you log in with an account on a LibreText page, so log in to a page using on the LibreText with an instructor account. On the blue bar here, you'll have this new tab that will pop up. You don't have it if you're not logged in, and you're logged in when this bar right here turns black. This bar is gray, you're not logged in. If this bar is blue, you're semi-logged in, which means you logged into the first step, but you need with single sign-on using your campus credentials, but you need to go to the next step off of there. So the black one is necessary, and we routinely get that as one of the stumbling blocks in order to move forward, to know that you are logged in. You'll then get this developer button that pops up, and it has a range of tools in order to be able to build resources off here. And one of them at the very top is the construction guide. And this is a great resource for people to be able to tap into and off of that. It's under construction. It's always under construction. Again, following what I mentioned before with the book, and especially since we're continually advancing the technology off of things, we need to go back and update the construction guide. And I think it's a handful of months out of date. There are a few things here and there that I need to be able to fix, and I will do that very quickly. So if you click on a construction guide, you see what a characteristic textbook looks like on the site. It's a top page. You have a series of chapters. Within each chapter, you have a series of sections. And so that's the canonical organization of a textbook. If you go to the contents, the table of contents, it will reflect that. So here are chapters. Inside a chapter, here's a section. That's there. I will mention also that we have a front matter and a back matter. Those things are necessary for when we compile the books. So that's just basically having some logistics. Some of them are a little legal for a declaration. Some of them are more traditional with coliforms and such in order to be able to put out there. The back matter automatically makes these two pages, the index and the glossary. Now, you may or may not necessarily have a desire in order to push either of them. The index is a dynamic index that's created automatically for you. You just have to do a few, you just have to give it the keywords that are important. The glossary is a little bit more complicated. However, we started to accumulate lots of glossaries and lots of different topics, making it so that you can actually grab the glossaries either in mass or pick and choose in order to build your own glossaries without having to go through the pain of building one, which again can be quite difficult out there. And then you have this infrastructure in place. I encourage you to take a look through the aspects behind the construction guide, but I'm not going to go through that right now.
School, I can guarantee anatomy is going to be the hardest class.
Was that a question? Was that a question to us, or was that a side question? I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that. Okay. Feel free to chime in, Claudia, if I didn't, if I muted you accidentally or incorrectly. Okay, so let's go back to this this organization that we have here. So again, you construct a vision of your book. The next one is you need accounts. So that's what we started out when we started this presentation 20 minutes ago, and that right there can go through a request form, which is found at register.libretext.org, or when you go to the conductor back page, you have it right here under account request. So you'll always have that if you ever need an account off of that. We don't have a single instance that or power account that powers everything. Right now, we're working on that in some way. There's a little bit of complexity behind that because we don't want everybody to have full control over everything that's out there. We had something like that before when we had an open wiki infrastructure, and then we had people post various things like erectile dysfunction drugs and Bollywood films and things like that. So we decided it was important in order to close that off in order for us to not have to deal with those sort of issues that took our time and resources that were out there. So anyways, back to these account infrastructure. So assuming you have the accounts that are necessary for doing that, and the first one you typically is just an account for the library that you're building in. And then comes a little bit of training. Well, this is part of an overview of that. And we do have training videos on the YouTube channel, which is at youtube.libretext.org. And I will, I'll paste that here just in case. There we go. Just in case that's forgotten. We do have office hours Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 to 10 o'clock, which you can also Pacific time. And that can be accessed via Zoom at zoom.libretext.org. If you want, you can also use officehours.libretext.org. They both go to the same spot. It's perfectly fine. Most of the time I'm there personally, although in some circumstances other people will step in. And most of the time we have more than one person because it's become popular over the last several months, especially at the start of terms when many people are building books for their corresponding class. And there are several aspects associated with the training and learning off of that. We also run workshops, and we have a 3-day long annual meeting in the summer called LibreFest that will go through various aspects of that. We have dates for that, and I believe it's the middle of July. However, I think Jennifer Rogers is here, so she can chime in with the exact dates that we were planning if she knows it off the top of her head. The Hope College people had already selected it. Are you aware of that, Jennifer?
Yes, I'll put it in the chat.
Okay.
It's the end of June.
The end of June.
And the virtual one is in July.
Right, the virtual one is what I was talking about. So if anyone is in the vicinity of Michigan, the central Michigan, or actually more on the west coast of the west coast of Michigan, and near Hope College, they will run a workshop in person, and they will even provide some resources for you to be able to get to Hope College to attend the workshop. Okay, so we need a series of training, and that's what part of this conversation is meant in order to address. And then comes a series of complexities or bifurcations, how you actually go about doing these things. So the first one, and I'm going to transition into showing these things eventually on the editing page, is if you're going to be remixing or not. So this is somewhat of a Hamlet situation, to remix or not to remix sort of thing, in which you're basically saying, are there existing content? Is there existing content on our libraries that addresses one or more components of the vision that you have? And the answer many times will be yes, but not necessarily all the times. But that means that you're essentially going to be doing a little bit of remixing if you want to capitalize on that, mixed in with a little bit of construction work, unless it addresses everything that you want. In that case there, the end of this section here is the end of you building your book. You don't need to worry about that. But it rarely is the case that you find exactly everything that you want that fits your vision. And the nice thing about this is that as more people put more visions into our library, the easier it is for other people to build their visions. And that is the beauty of OER and the beauty of sharing. That's out there. So let's say that we want to remix existing content, and now we go through these additional steps here. And the first concept off of here, and I'm going to take a moment here. After I go through these next two steps, I'm going to start to transition into the technology for these things, is that, well, you can't remix something that you don't know what you're going to remix. You need to know what it is that you want to be able to bring in. And that right there means that you need to do an environmental scan to go through the pages on our site and say, I want this one, I want that one, I want that one, and I want it in that order. That right there is necessary in order to be able to do that. And it's actually what's building what we call building a remixing map. And a remixing map is a relatively straightforward organization that can be anything you want. This is one example of a remixing map, color-coded on our side, that was created at Lubbock Christian University in order to build an introductory chemistry book. And all you need to know with a remixing map is what page you like and where you want it to be organized. So in this case here, they're building the book and their book is in yellow. And all other content on our library is in green. And they're predominantly mixing from one book. So in that case there, the first chapter of their book is largely the first chapter and some of the second chapter of this book. That's a text map. It's not Tro's textbook. It's actually following Tro's commercial textbook. But what you'll see here is section one of his book is in section 1 of this new book that's being created. Fine. And then 1.2 is 1.2, and now 2.5 is now mixed into 1.3. So that's when this vision deviates from this book. And then you can start taking a look through these things, and you can see that the organization starts to deviate significantly from the nature of the book, which is expected, especially if your vision is more unique than other commercial books out there, as many people have. But this is mixing from mostly this book, although in some cases, and I can't, like for example, this is grabbing a book from grabbing a page from a different book. You have access to 500,000 pages on our site. You don't have to pull from one book to another book in order to be, pull only from one book. Although it's convenient to find the book that most closely aligns with the vision that you have. Now, this is an example of a remixing map, and it's critical in order to be able to work from. But it doesn't have to look like this. It could be on anything. It could be on a handwritten piece of paper, because once you remix, you don't need the document anymore. In this case here is written as a Excel form. You can write it on line, you can write it on toilet paper. It doesn't matter. It just gives you a reference point to say, I like this page and I want it to be organized here, and that's it. So let's assume that you have this organization, and this may take some time. In fact, it should take time, because you can't remix unless you know what you need or what you want to do. And the next step is to remix. And that introduces the technology that we call the remixer. So at this point, I'm going to step away from this roadmap and go into building a book. So when you get an account on a library, it's not going to look like this, because this is my account, which is a little bit more powered than your account. But you're going to have, when you log in, you'll have these 3 sections right here. If you go under your name here, you'll have your own personal sandbox. Now, you don't have editing rights anywhere else except for your sandbox. And that's meant in order to protect the integrity of the database so that not anyone can come in and start to break things. So this is my sandbox, and my sandbox is messy because you're looking at the result of 14 years of various things that I've done at different points. It's not overly important. Yours will be empty. Actually, yours will look a little bit like this. and I apologize for how this is going to look because again, my view is different than your view. You're going to have what should be 3 or 4 boxes. And this is taking a while because it's pulling up lots of pages. 3 or 4 boxes. One will be training, tutorials, and references. And most of those things are already reflected in the construction guide. You guys don't see that? Veronica, you don't seem to agree with me.
No, I don't have training, tutorials, and references. I have campus bookshelves, learning objects.
Click under your name, under Sandbox.
Welcome to your new category. No boxes.
And now click on Sandbox again. Because you need to create your sandbox. So it creates your sandbox for the first time that you access it.
Where?
If you go under your name and click on Sandbox again.
Oh, again? Okay.
Yeah, because it needed to create it first. So we don't create these things automatically because many accounts people don't access the sandbox, and we're just trying to not gum up the system.
Nope, I've done it several times. I just have a blue box. Welcome to your new category.
Okay. What library are you on?
Social sciences.
If you go one notch up, so this right here is a thumb, is a breadcrumb. It's called breadcrumbs, and it tells you the organization of your book. So you
Okay.
probably have your email address right here. If you click on
Yes.
sandboxes here, it goes up
Okay.
one notch. And such. And I need to take a look and find out why yours didn't go to this upper level. And you'll see then the training.
There we go.
Training tutorials. Okay. And this is what I've used when I do workshops in person. Is okay, these are the activities. Let's go through these at various points in order to be able to access it. However, it's far beyond what a single hour can do. However, you can feel free to go through them in order to address these issues. You'll find videos to help you along, and the construction guide is meant in order to do so. So anyways, I digress here. And I want to mention again that in your sandbox, you have full ability in order to create, delete, and edit any page that you want. However, when you're outside your sandbox, you do not have that access. Now, if you find something that needs to be edited or changed on your sandbox, sorry, it's edited on in the library. So part of the aspect of OER is the ability, and especially within the LibreText project, is a community curation. That if you see a page or something that you dislike, you don't like it, it's factually incorrect, and you need it to be addressed. Now, like I said, you don't have editing rights on there, but at the bottom of every page, and this is not a great page because there's lots of, you go at the very bottom of these pages. Actually, I may have deactivated it. I'm not, sorry, I think I deactivated something for I need to go to a page. Here's some content. This is still not. Actually, I'll just go to. So at the bottom of a page that has content on it, if it's classified properly, you'll have this little button right here. This is only available when you log in. So you have the ability to say yes or no, happy or sad about a page. And that gives us mechanisms in order to find pages that need addressing, because we bring in a lot of content that has a lot of different levels of development. And in some circumstances, it needs to be improved. This is the reason why OpenStax has errata pages for every single OpenStax book, because it's meant to be updated. We have our errata moved into forums that our curation boards go through and address rapidly. So typically when someone has an issue, it gets addressed within hours, if not within days. It's not a multi-year process waiting for a new edition to come out like what OpenStax does. And that's just because their model is different than the way that we do. Last, so you could do this, but you can provide feedback. If you click on this, it will send an email directly to the board. and then they can start to follow through off that. And if you have a desire in order to be part of our editing board, please let me know. We'll give you access to the forum. Basically, you help to guide things and move things forward off of that and such. So anyways, I digress off of that. So we're talking about remixing. So we're assuming that we have a remixing infrastructure. We want to build something. We have an account. And the first thing we want to do is we want to use the remixer. The remixer gives us the ability in order to access all these pages effectively. And you access the remixer by going to tools on your blue bar, and it's right there called Remixer or OER Remixer. Click on that. It'll take a moment to come up. Actually, it'll take a few seconds because it needs to load a few things. And this is the Remixer. It's the most powerful infrastructure, the most powerful tool that you have in being able to tap into the LibreText repository in order to build your book. And it's exceedingly powerful, and it's designed to be a drag and drop. There are a few little tweaks that we want to do with version 3.0 that we're hoping to address in the near future, but this is the basic aspect of it here. So the primary issue here is to say, take stuff from the library and build your book. And that's reflected in these two panels, where here's the library panel, which is everything that you have, and you can pull from any library that you happen to be on. So you can grab across here. However, you can only save in your sandbox in the library that you open this thing up. So in other words, let's say Veronica were to go to the chemistry library and open this thing up. Because she doesn't have an account, I presume, on this, she's not going to be able to save. She can remix, but she's not going to be able to save the remix, which means that it's largely just it's not an exercise in futility. You can actually save it and share with it, but it's not overly useful. And you know that you have the ability to remix. There should be a color code off of here in order to be able to take it up. If you log in anonymously, you can find out what's going on here. So even people who don't have accounts can access the remixer and play and work with it, just not able to save it. Okay, and the basic essence, and I'm just going to start out with this, and it comes up in what we call the new remix mode, which means you're building a new remix. So when you're building a book, you only enter this mode, or once you save this, you never enter this mode again, because you already have something that you're working on. And that's when you switch over to the edit remix mode. So this would be the equivalent of new remix and load remix. Of sorts, which is part of the parlance that will be changing in the version 3.0. But I just want to show you how this works before I go into a few details off of here. The key aspect is essentially dragging and dropping. You can come in and say, well, I'm making a general chemistry book, which I'm sure that Veronica is excited in order to do. And you come in and you find and say, well, I want chapter 2 of OpenStack's book. You take it, I click on it, I drag it over, and we'll put it right there. And now it's dragged into my book. And there it is. And it comes with the chapter, and it comes with all the sections associated with the chapter. Now, what was chapter 2 and all these components that went from 2.1 now becomes chapter 1, and it gets numbered accordingly. That's because we have this auto number on, which automatically fixes these things. So if this was chapter 1.5, sorry, section 1.5 chemical formula, and I move it up here, you now saw it got changed to 1.2, and everything gets changed accordingly. And this means you don't need to fight in terms of how to renumber pages accordingly and sections accordingly. And that means if you were to take this thing and move it down here, it then does its changes off of here. You also have the ability in order to delete these things. It's your vision. You decide on how you want to go about doing this thing. You're not touching or editing the library, like I mentioned before. So you could pull and drag anything you want, play around as much as you want. That's there. So before I go through a few things, I just want to talk about this stuff up here that I mentioned before. So I will mention that we have the show tutorial that if you flip this switch here, and it'll start to guide you a little bit in terms of addressing different issues. That gets into that aspect. I'm going to let you review that on your own. And then we have this auto number option. So you can turn off the auto number if you just don't want to deal with it, which is fine. I encourage you to not do that. And there are options for auto numbering. For example, you can say that you want all your chapters to be labeled with chapters. And now all of them are labeled with chapters. or I want all my sections to be labeled with sections. And now you can see it's labeled with sections. Or you can not label like that. This thing here is a little complicated, but you essentially say what you start your number with for chapters, which is your first level, and what you start your numbers with topics, which is the second level. So you can say you want topics to start with 2, which rarely happens, and it starts with 2.2, while a chapter starts with 1. That's convenient because someone like these things, many times books have these sort of preludes. I call them preludes. They're pages at the start of a chapter that sort of is meant to kind of get the juices rolling, but they don't really contain much content in order to learn. So I typically number them 0. In some cases, you can unnumber them. That's out there off of that. And this section guide, I don't want to discuss right now. It just tells you if you want to be able to have multiple hierarchies below it. And such. And most, if you're following just a simple book, chapter, section organization, which 95% of all books follow, that doesn't play a role off of that. So this is me organizing that text map into a reality. Okay, I could save this map as a file, and I can load it back up again if I want. It's also saved in the cache. So if your computer gets crashed and you pull it back up again, and you didn't wipe your cookies, it will be saved in your cookies, and then you're able to pull with it. And if you want to, you can pull it from the previous session. That grabs it if you kill it, and you just want to be able to pull it up. These things are pretty straightforward. This is start over, which wipes this clean. This is add a page. So let's say I want to add a few more pages on here. You notice it automatically numbers it with the section. I can then do page properties, although that pops this thing up, but just double clicking pops it up too, so it's not necessary. And it tells you if you want to edit the table here. This is the source, which tells you where it came from. And these are meta tags that you can modify. I don't encourage people using this as the primary mechanism to handle meta tags on pages. There are better ways in order to go, easier ways to go about doing it. But in this case here, you can say, I want this page to be written, but I don't want this, and this to be indicated onto it. And such. Don't worry about that too much. This is not something that's happened. I can then delete pages using that, which is fine. And then I can undo and redo as you would expect. And that's about it for this page. There's one second page that's just very transiently that the thing does. I want to emphasize here that this right here, that when you create a book, you can again only save in your sandbox, period, because that's the only page you can edit. In fact, the Remixer is designed that I can only save in the sandbox. It's hardwired into it so that everyone, I know where everybody's saving instead of moving it in a variety of other places. The second one is that I have not saved this book. This book does not exist on the LibreText. It exists on my computer, my personal computer. I have not saved it in order to tell LibreText to create this book with this structure. I want to do that now, and that's save to server. So this is like when you're writing an email and you're typing on the email on your browser, on your email client on your computer, and you're not really writing on your server in order to submit somewhere. You press button that says save, and it takes what you've done on your personal computer and pushes it to the internet, to the server. It's the same thing here. This is just on my, this is a vision, and now I want to press this button in order to make this vision in reality. And it goes through this step in order to say, well, this is what it's telling you what this is going to do. It wants to do a 2-step process. So it says it's going to make a book that has 11 pages that are blank because they were blank off of here. 5 pages will be copy transcluded, and I'm going to explain that momentarily, in addition to copy fork and copy full. These are more complicated issues. And then this follows a recommended structure, which is, again, book, chapter, section. What's not recommended, what gets, if you said book, chapter, section, subsection, you can build any hierarchy you want. But if you have a book, chapter, section hierarchy, this works best because if your book wants to be imported into Canvas learning management system, it does not accept anything other than 2 levels. And that's a limitation for learning management system, for that learning management system. So we recommend that you stick to that if you can, but nothing says that you can't make an infrastructure that says book, unit, chapter, page, where several chapters are fit within a unit, or you could do book, chapter, section, subsection. But when you export these things as a common cartridge file to go to Canvas, it will reshuffle them in order to make it only into 2 levels. It'll keep the numbering of it correct, but it has to do that because that's the limitation of the learning management system. Anyways, I saved a server. I've gone the 2-step. Okay, and now it's telling me I did not give it a name, which is probably an important thing. This is my special book. Saved a server. And that's the case. Oh, I have to, I forgot, I have to finish this at the top of the hour. Sorry, I'm just taking my own sweet time here and such. So every page it makes, it takes a little bit of time in order to make, but it's going about doing that. This right here is a link that goes to my page. I can click on that now in order to see it, but it's still writing, but now it's complete. I'm going to click on here, and now I've made my book. And there's my book. And this is how I've organized. Everything is blank except for this was the chapter that I brought over from chemistry. And I can go into here and there's the section that comes over chemistry. Now, let me mention something briefly. I can go back and revise that book. But I want to switch to edit remix mode. That's to load in the book. So then I can go in, and you're not going to see learning these 2 things. That's just me. It comes to the sandbox. You go to your sandbox, and your sandbox will be yours. Mine is going to have everybody's sandbox, which takes a moment to come in because it's a significantly more complicated here. But if let's say I go to my sandbox, which fortunately starts with A, and I can go to my special book. There it is. I can click on that, and I can basically load the remix. Now I'm in remix mode, which is editing an existing remix. It looks very similar. In fact, it's near identical. However, this thing exists. Before it did not. So that means if I take this page here and I decide I want to delete this thing, it's telling me it's going to delete something that really exists. And then because the auto number is set up, it starts to change these things out. This right here is an E, and it is designated outside of the numbering system because I gave it a letter for doing it. So I do that for exercises and summaries and things like that, just to keep it out of the infrastructure because it kind of sticks out. And then if I were to save this after deleting that, and why don't I just add a new page here too, and I'll add it right there. So this will delete that page. This is going to rename that page because the auto number changed what was 2.5 into 2.4. And that's orange instead of red. And then green is a new page. And then I'm going to save the server again. And it goes through the process off of here. This number here is not correct, or maybe not correct. It only manipulates 4. And that's how you can build a vision, edit it, build it, edit it. I'm sorry, build it once, edit, re-edit, 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 and continually moving through and dealing with it as a whole. And you can come in and drag and drop as you want that's out there. Now, I think this was a topic that Veronica said. So what Veronica I think is saying is that you have a resource that's not on the LibreText site that you want to bring in so you can remix. So
Yes.
that's what we call a harvest. Let me phrase it. We need to do a harvest to bring it in and make it standardized. Now you can do it yourself because you have your own book and you're going to be able to edit these pages off of here. But you may want us to do it for you for a variety of reasons. And one is that it's easier for us to be able to go through and modify that. So you submit what's called a harvest request.
I did.
Oh, you did already?
Yep.
Okay.
So I just need to wait then.
Yeah, I need to take a look and see. So if I look at the harvest request form, I can see that, yes, you did in fact submit a request yesterday, and I haven't looked at it yet. So let me take
No
a look
problem.
at, and then I assign it to a student harvester that will go through the process in order to be able to deal with it. Once I create that, I press a button that becomes a project, and you can be a member of the project, and then you'll be aware of the progress of that project, just like you are here. Okay, so like I said, I have to end at the top of the hour. So let's go into this book that we have here. I want to emphasize one thing before I start editing, and that's this concept of this copy transclude, copy full, and copy complete that I mentioned here. And this is a little complicated, but if I present it in this way, I think it will make it easier. Most people on here are on either on this presentation are either working on a Windows box, on a Linux box, or on a Macintosh box or Apple box. And you're familiar with the concept of making a sort of pseudo file. You may not call it that. If you're on a Windows box, you call it a shortcut. If you're on a Apple, you call it an alias. If you're on a Linux box, you call it a symbolic link. It's a concept of a file or something that behaves and looks like a file, but really it tells you to go somewhere else. And that's convenient for a variety of reasons. Like you said, organizing structures and finding things. The same thing happens here. So the key point is that when you build this book by default for you, it will do what's called copy transclude or transclude the page. It means essentially you go to this page, it's 2.3, and it pulls it from the OpenStax book. Fine. It looks like it's here on this page. It does to all intents and purposes, but I'm going to tell you it's not here. Okay. These are not the droids you're looking for. It's really stored somewhere else. It's stored from where you're at. So if you were to try to edit this page, which you can do when you have a black bar on here, if you have editing rights, and since you created this on your sandbox, you could edit it. And you'll see all that stuff is not there. It's just one little line. That little line says it's not here, it's somewhere else. And you can click on this and you can see where it goes to the page here. And this right here, if you were to edit it, I can come in and I can modify it directly here. Now, why do we want to go about doing that? Well, the vast majority of pages that we see people remixing from are not actually editing the content on the page. So the belief is, well, why build unnecessary copies of the page? That makes it difficult to curate, because if I were to if I found an issue on here, and like I mentioned, OpenStax has this errata, they have issues. We find issues in their books and we need to update it ourselves. And we want to make it so everyone can benefit from it. If you transclude and I modify the source page, then everyone who transcludes in it automatically wins and gets the content on there. Now, we're careful in order not to do that, except for being able to update things that are there, but it provides a mechanism to do curation efforts automatically across the board. And that avoids this fragmentation aspect that I constantly rail upon, that I think is heavily hindering the progress of the system, because if 5 other people are building the same book here, I can make it so that everyone can benefit simultaneously from the centralized infrastructure. Now, let's say you don't like that. You want this on your book. This is the page on the book, and I want to be able to edit it, which is fair. You may want, your vision may separate from that. And the way you go about doing is you take this page and you want to fork it. The first thing I'll indicate, this little icon up here means that this page here is transcluded. It's our way in order to give you an indication. You can only see this when you log in. And if you click on this icon, and you can also see it under options, you have this thing called fork or forker. You click that, it takes the page that was transcluded and then splits them up. It's like a fork in the road. Wait a moment here. Okay, it's going to reload. And now I've forked the page. Now this page looks the same because it is the same content, but this content's now on this page. So if I were to edit it, now I can come in and edit this thing, and it's separate from the source material. So again, the recommendation that I have here is, if you want to edit things because it doesn't work for you, do it. Okay. But if you're not going to edit that page, then why make a copy of it? Just make an image of it, or this mirror image off of it. It's again called transclusion. It's a term that originates in the late 60s, early 70s, and it's exceedingly powerful off of here and to set this thing up. So that is the case. So again, I have to step away a few minutes ago, so I want to emphasize a few things off of here. You can edit any page by pressing the edit button, and this is where you have the WYSIWYG interface. And the WYSIWYG interface is laid out in the construction manual. It has the same basic aspects that you've probably seen in your learning management system, in Google Docs, even resembling a lot in Word and other infrastructure. There are a few additional features that are particularly important here. One is that this is a box. it's meant to be sort of outside of the flow of organization. This is a learning objectives box, but this right here is an example box. This is an exercise box. You can go to any boxes that you want up here and decide which box that you want. It's styled in a certain way. We do have the ability in order to manipulate colors for specific campuses and specific people, but we do that largely if they're a member of the consortium. We don't go through that on individual basis for people. And in this case here, they embedded a video and a few other things that are really important. This is a WYSIWYG interface. What you see is what you get. However, reality, everything is in HTML. Now, HTML may scare you. It scared me the first time that we did it. Most of the time, you never need to touch HTML. You use a WYSIWYG interface, but even Word or any other editor, really, it's saving stuff in this sort of like environment, not graphical. You just are using it only with graphical. There are a few other issues that I just don't have the time in order to go to in terms of figure blocks and other things like that. Many of them are quite straightforward. It's always easy if you can edit a page to take a look at the page and see what it looks like. And then say, oh, I like this. I'm going to copy this. You do a Control-C, and then you can copy it into your book. Any page you can see the page contents, which is right here. And that gives you the HTML page, which again may be confusing, but this is the stuff you can copy and paste and put it down there. I will mention a couple other things. Actually, no, I won't. I'll avoid that for now. I'm going to cancel that and such. And I will again defer to the construction guide. If you look under basic editing, it will go through each of these steps. When you want to add a video, you can go through here, add images, tables, hyperlinks, and such like that. Please take a look at them. Again, this is beyond the overall scope of my class, not my class, sorry, this presentation. I will mention something briefly. When you've been modifying and editing and improving the book in your sandbox, at some point you want it to be outside of your sandbox. And that's what we call publishing. And you have to request us to publish, so my team to do this. And not because that we especially want to be able to do that. We want to take a look at your book. We want to make sure it follows an organization. We want to scan over it to do several bots in order to make sure the standard works out right, and basically fix little bits and pieces of that may need to be fixed so it follows the standard of everything else, so that other people can see your vision and say, I would like to use that. Instead of having things that get propagated off of there. And it's just because there's lots of issues associated with editing, modifying that. At that point of requesting a publishing process, which you can do by emailing info@libertex.org, and we're working on a button in order to be able to facilitate that. At that point, we then compile it, which means that it makes a PDF of it. It makes the common cartridge of it. It makes a bookstore a version of that. It will eventually have an EPUB output of that, and several other components off of it. So it's meant to bring it all together and then put it out there, and then you can move it to we move it to your campus bookshelf and such. Now, I will mention that every campus can get up to 5 books, customized books that they can do freely. However, if they go above 5, then we ask them to be part of our LibraNet consortium. And that's meant in order to maintain the infrastructure that we've constructed for people, because we want campuses to be able to join in with this infrastructure. And when they do that, they get their own branded commons and conductor system, like what I mentioned before. So you can go into and see, for example, Los Rios Community College District, and that provides a branded interface that they can go into and also show the books that are for it. So there are other benefits for LibraNet Consortium membership. However, at the process of publishing, we then review how many other books that campus has across the board. So in some cases, it's a first come, first served basis for the faculty in those campuses to go to, but it's just part of our sustainability model that we put out there. And we'll let you know if your campus has already exceeded it. And LibraNet consortium membership is exceedingly cheap. It's $1,000 a year in order to be able to get involved. For a campus, that's nothing. So with that, I have like 1 minute. I can address any questions. I can step away. Both Ethan and Jennifer is not here anymore. Oh yeah, there she is. And they can continue the conversation with you that I'm unfortunately unable to do so.
Thank you. This was helpful.
And then when you go back to your conductor, here, you then go into construction mode, which you can be basic editing. You can then have more advanced editing levels to deal with accessibility, the publishing, and then curation, because like I said, you always want to constantly be updating this process in order to move forward. And we're working on other mechanisms or other workflows here for people to be able to capitalize on it and move it forward to be as powerful as a tool for you to be able to capitalize on. But because we have other things like visualizations and images and things like that, that requires a little bit more finesse in order to deal with, both from accessibility perspective and the complexity of that. There's lots of opportunities for taking your book and moving it into a far more advanced infrastructure that I just don't have time in order to be able to discuss it right now. With that, I thank you very much. We will be posting this, and I want to say along with my slides, but my slides are not on here, on our YouTube channel very soon. I will step away, and feel free to ask Ethan or Jennifer any questions that you have available. Thank you for your time. Take care.